Okay, I'm going to open this special meeting of the Eugene School District 4J Board, and it is 9:22, and it is May 23rd. We have 3 items on our agenda tonight, and I'm going to begin with the item about designating a board member to negotiate the contract with our first choice superintendent candidate. So we talked about this at our last meeting some, and understood it more in executive session, what the process is. And so the first step is the board will be deliberating and hopefully coming to consensus on a superintendent candidate in executive session. And then we ask that a board member will talk with that first choice candidate to start an initial conversation. Neither the candidate voting on the candidate nor what we come up with in the conversation about the contract is a final decision. Those are done in public, but the process to at least see where we are with contract negotiations, if our first choice candidate will even accept our offer, or we'll have a conversation. So the process is to designate a board member. The other thing is the entire board will be involved with setting the general parameters of the contract. We need to agree on that because we vote on the contract. So we're going to look at the content, have a pretty good idea what will be in there, with probably some financial ability to negotiate financially. Does everyone know what we're doing in terms of appointing someone, what their role is in this process? Any questions about that?
What did I miss? Did you say something different than the?
No, I think I just summarized for the public who might be here and what we're actually doing. So
thank you.
Yeah, I don't think there's anything different, but please correct me if anyone heard anything different. So I think we will entertain a motion to appoint someone.
I was supposed to get the language for the motion and I don't have it yet. So, oh, I see Christine's hands raised. Yay.
Christine.
Hi there. I apologize, Maya. I just finished drafting it and emailed it to you, but let me read it out loud. I move that the board authorize, and then fill in the blank, to negotiate a proposed agreement with the board's first choice for superintendent once that decision is made, subject to the negotiations parameters provided by the board.
Okay, so now I say that, except I have to fill in the blank, and I will do so based on feedback from board members. So I move that the board authorize Gordon Lafer to negotiate a proposed agreement with the board's first choice for superintendent once that decision is made, subject to the negotiations parameters provided by the board.
Is there a second? So Maya moved and Laurel seconded. Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor of appointing Gordon Lafer to do that, raise your hand. We have Gordon, Laurel, Michelle, Kirthi, and Maya and Judy voting to appoint Gordon. All those opposed, same sign. We have Alicia voting against. So the motion passes and Gordon will be the representative. Okay, the next item, Christine, your hand's up, or maybe that was from before.
No, sorry about that. I wondered if the board is going to provide negotiations parameters now, or if it will do so at a future executive session.
I don't feel, I just sent out the contracts earlier today as examples. So I don't know that, do people feel prepared to have that conversation based on the contracts I sent out? I think we better do that at our next meeting. Gordon,
Yeah, I don't feel prepared to do it now. I was just going to say, as the person chosen to do it, I would really like us to do it and to have that, to hear that from everybody else.
Laurel,
And so by next meeting, we're going to be sometime on Wednesday in one of those bubbles of time. We're going to talk about it then. Is that correct?
we can do that, yes. And that's in public, right, Christine?
It is.
Okay. The contract negotiations?
No, the content, the parameters in the contract, not the negotiations. But what we want to put in the contract, that discussion is public.
Okay.
And I can work with Maya around some suggested motions for that, if that's helpful, and have a template that is corrected that accounts for the new change in law relating to superintendent contracts. That can all be ready to go by that point. And then you're all working from the same document.
Thank you. That would be very helpful,
Sure.
Christine. Okay.
I'm asking a question here. Okay. The next item on our agenda is to talk about a hearing. We need to talk about the parameters. We're going to do a public hearing on a complaint. And it's a complaint we received in March 17th from an employee, and the decisions made to have a public hearing to hear the complaint. So I think our discussion now is to talk about what the public hearing is going to look at like and how we're going to proceed with that process. And I see Laurel's hands up.
So my request is that it is in writing. So we submit the written material from both the complaint and the response, that and then verbally to talk about what this means, that we also allow for on both sides, those that have professional knowledge in the subjects that are part of the complaint and response, and that we also hire somebody who is quite melanated to be the I forget the name that that guy called it, but to be the person who is in charge of the hearing.
Hearings officer, I think. Yeah.
The hearing person. Yeah, what you said. So that's what my request is for this. I think it's, I don't, and I would like, I think we could ask Dallas Boggs, who is, as everyone knows, an extraordinarily fair person and also the chair of the police commission, to be part of this. He's got all the parameters around him that, and no, I haven't asked him to do. It'll be somebody else that has asked, but so I don't know if you know if he can even do it. But that's the caliber of person I'm looking for, because I'm trying to go for the ethical decision, somebody who appeals to a wide spectrum in our community and that we know has ethics above reproach and has done wonderful work in our community. Thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or thoughts about the hearing?
I just wanted to ask if Laurel could repeat the things that she laid out a little slower so I can write them down.
I have to repeat it.
Sorry.
I wrote them down.
That's forever.
Hey, Laurel, I wrote them down. Maybe the test would be for me to say them and tell me if I got it right.
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay. So Laurel's suggesting that we submit, that each the defendant and the complainant and the complainee submit written materials, and that we verbally talk about them. So I wanted to clarify what that meant, but that's what you said. So do people recap that, or do we just read the verbal materials and you add, I mean, the written materials and add some things in writing, in talking?
Muted myself. I think it would be maybe each person gets 2 times to, and if somebody has a better process, I'm saying this from what I'm guessing what would work, but each person would get a chance to say something 2 times. And it's not, you did this kind of, it's to talk about the concerns, what it means, and all that. So definitely the parameters would be to keep to the subjects that are in and part of the complaint. And that is also the stuff I mentioned, which Christine doesn't call a complaint, so you can call it the response. But that is part of the subject matter.
Go ahead. And then, I'm sorry. And also have an opportunity for people with professional knowledge. Maybe we could quantify that each, if the complainant has someone they want to bring forward with professional knowledge relevant to the complaint, either side could bring someone. Should we say one person or a certain number?
I would say it needs to be, I would like the parameters to be a professional background. It can't be your best friend says you're a great person. It would be, because my best friend would also say the same thing. I make sure they're well paid. But it needs to be somebody with professional background in the subject, and please, anybody else who has had backgrounds in this, please chime in. But that's my thought. I don't want to hear Harry Singer's opinion on my race.
Yeah. Well,
ever again. But definitely in this forum, because he's not a professional. He is somebody with a lot of opinions. You see, there's a big difference there.
Kirthi. Oh, you're muted.
Yeah, it would probably help if I asked the question off mute. I was going to ask is, would we be providing like a written documentation of what the parameters are to each of the people? Like this is what your oral and your verbal response would be, and would be doing that like at this point, or would we have a chance to like review what that looks like? And then 2, like would we be writing something like, I'm just kind of curious as to like, once we decide this here, what the next steps are, like would they be receiving like something that's like, hey, welcome to your public hearing, here are your responsibilities, here are what you're allowed to bring, here are like the minutes you're allowed to talk, here are the twice a things, like what, like what are we responsible for deciding this minute at this thing versus like what do we get to review? And then I agree with like the professional background, which is like for the parameters of these particular things, if you have an expert or a professional blah 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 that meets these particular things, like here's like, can we provide like recommendations and what that means, like an academic or a blah blah, like just so we have some, like are those the kinds of things that we're looking to do like right now in this meeting? Or is that, I guess I'm trying to figure out what are like very, I keep asking these questions every time, and I'm sorry, I know we haven't.
No, they're great questions.
Yeah, like
I think we're all building this as we go.
Is our goal today to like end with like a document that says here are the 5 bullets of what we're going to provide the people appearing at this hearing?
I think that the goal from my perspective is I would like to get as specific as we can today. Like each person could speak for 20 minutes and could have one a person with professional knowledge that can speak directly to what their points they're trying to make for something, or, you know, get specific and then write it up, because I know it's hard to do that all, so we all see it in writing after, because I think this has got to be communicated to also the person who gave the complaint. So they need to know how to prepare. And so that would be, I'd like to be specific, but not write it up on the spot, because
Right.
send it out. Yes.
Well, then in my case, my recommendation is to be as like tight as possible on it, like, which is like, you know, I mean, if we're going to give if we can decide, you know, if it's going to be a 15 minutes or 20 minutes, you know, or how long we plan on being there, like, knowing how long, but it is an important issue, you know, like just kind of what, and if it's going to be as part of, like, is this going to be something separate from like a regular board meeting? And if so, that's something to be taken into account, or if this is going to be a completely separate session. And so like time parameters are important on that too. And then I think it also like can speak to like, you know, to a certain extent, like, and do we want like the written documentation to come also before, so we have something to read as they're presenting it? Or like, you know, I mean, I kind of want to know all these things also, or decide these things.
I think those are all important. Now, Christine offered
I
to,
didn't write all this down, so sorry.
no, Christine offered to share a document that maybe we could write some of these things down so everyone could see them as we decide them. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah. I think that's what you were suggesting, Christine, right?
It is, yeah. Eric had previously written up kind of a draft, and I know it'll need some work, but it might be helpful if we screen shared, and if folks feel like they're ready for that, or when you're ready for that, let us know, and I can screen share.
Could you share the policy around hearings with us? If that has already been shared, could you tell me which email it's in?
The policy around hearings.
Yes, there must be policy.
I know
There-
Eric had shared with us at least some of the
Legal.
the legal, I mean, like what do you call them? Just the suggestions on types of things that we.
The document that we saw, right? Yeah. Michelle has her hand up while are you getting ready to share your screen, Christine?
Are you talking about the document we didn't get to keep?
So the document in executive session is an attorney-client privileged memo, and so we're not going to share that here. But what we have that Eric prepared is a kind of hearing, a list that goes through the hearing procedures, and so you could see it and make sure we're not missing something. Is that?
I just want to know that it's not opinion and that it's the policies around hearings. And so I can look at that
Yeah,
on my own without bias involved.
I'd be happy to share. I'd be happy to share it.
I think the document's suggestion of how it's a suggestion of how a hearing process could be. Is that right? And we could edit that. Is it in a form that we could edit that as we see it?
Yes, I'll edit it as you go.
And
I'll just-
while you're sharing that, Michelle's had her hand up. So do you have a comment, Michelle, or question?
I have a question. So generally in a public hearing, are you working toward a focused outcome? And can we provide parameters on the kind of outcome that we would like to see?
Well, the hearing that is being sought in this instance is one for fact-finding and allowance of presentation of evidence, which is based upon what the complaint is, and then opportunity to respond to develop that context. So it's not outcome driven other than education of the board on all what are deemed pertinent facts by both parties, both the complainant and the respondent. Trying to educate the board so that the board is in a position to make a decision on the outcome.
Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Michelle?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, Laurel, your hand's up.
I just want to point out that we're being asked to make a decision without information given to us. And now they want to put up a piece of paper that they wrote and have us refine their opinions. I'm asking for us to look at policy, because what I've seen since I've been here is a skewing of policy to their agenda. I obviously don't like that, because obviously it's made to try to force me off the board. So won't happen, but also I am going to point out each time this is attempted, because I really think it's important, because nobody did this for me as an, well, not much, a little bit, as a new board member. And I think it's important to show when that what legal counsel has made is what their interpretation is. I've asked for the policy and I've been denied the policy. I guess I'm supposed to go look for it by myself.
So let me just clarify. I don't know of a policy, but maybe, is there a policy about hearings?
If
Or
there's
is it
no
law?
policy, then how are there any rules around it? I'm sure there's state policy of some sort, because we've been told a whole bunch of rules. And if there's no policy, which are the rules that legally govern boards, then there's no rules around this hearing and we can do whatever we want, which is disturbing. Mind you, I'm not for that.
So where are the guardrails or the guidance, Christine? Do you know?
Yeah, so the administrative regulation KLAR is the complaint procedure, and that does not provide a detailed, it allows for the possibility of a hearing, but it doesn't provide for a detailed set of guardrails around what that hearing is. And truly, for this type of a hearing, there are not many legal guardrails. I mean, it's a complaint against an individual board member. There's fundamental notions of due process that I think, providing people the opportunity to be heard, and that's a key component of it. But other than that, it's really up to the board to fashion, how long, how many witnesses, are you going to allow questions, and some of those kinds of things. There also is state law relating to executive session and hearing when you hear complaints against employees in executive session. And but that doesn't really relate right now. And I don't think that's what you're asking for. So
administrative rules don't apply to the board because we don't establish them. That is made by administration for their employees. So do we need to establish a policy before we do this? So we can do this correctly?
No, some administrative regulations are passed by the board. In this particular case, I believe that the board has delegated. I think you've said that you follow the procedure in the policy you pass. You say you follow the procedures in KLAR. So
the board has
in the past has said they follow that. So my problem with this is I have no due process. The only person who has due process is the complainant, really. I've kind of fought for this due process. And the reality is there's no rules around that, even though it was presented to us that these were all absolute rules, which is fascinating to me. I think it's really important that we look at this and we absolutely can have some professionals to speak on white supremacy and how it's used, tone policing and how it's used to silence. I think it's very important we talk about the choices that were made by the district. And I, for myself, as a respondent, I would only be me that can say that, I guess, because I get to respond when somebody's attacking me. Even if it's an attack against me because of my skin color. I definitely think it's important that we use this opportunity to show as a board that we do not approve of using our complaint process to support white supremacy and racial harassment. And that is what is important. So I hope we do that. And I hope you take this opportunity. Thank you and I yield.
Kirthi.
I literally just wrote down in my Word document on just putting together what are the key parameters of the format we're trying to just get to right now. So if you would like, I can share my screen in order to just move this conversation forward. Or if somebody else would like to type this up. Like I think, Laurel, I'm in agreement with everything you just said on what we're trying to do this for on those. And in seeming to not have anything else to go by. And if we're going to be making this up, I'd rather just make it up. Like, let's just make it up, like, instead of just doing it at this point. So like, if you want, I can share my screen. I've just got the questions up there. I can take notes. Christine, if you want to do it, I am fine with just giving you that too. But like, at the moment, literally, it is not very pretty, but this is, otherwise, it just says, my thing just says format, times, response times. What are your things on here? Do we want to hold it during a board meeting? Are we having a separate time for it? What are the timings? What should response times look like? And then we can put the legalese around it. I think
Doesn't look like we're looking at Kirthi's words.
no, this is Christine's.
So I'm not sure why this is up here. I would like to see your words, Kirthi.
It like I said, it's I think Christine has to stop sharing or give me share strings or whatever it is.
You can send it to Judy.
It just says I can't start screen sharing while another participant is sharing.
Could you email it to all of us?
Again,
You should be able to share now.
Okay.
You should share now.
like I said, not pretty. It's just literally like, I think these are the questions that we need to like just decide on. It's in order to just to move this conversation forward. I think there's
Well, yeah, it's the questions you asked. So let's. Yeah.
So I don't really have any suggestions on these beyond this, but like, I think just to get us started on what a format would look like I think starting is like, do we want to do this during a board meeting? Do we want to have a separate session for this is the first question.
So Gordon's had his hand up and then let's go to answering these. Is it related to this, Gordon? No, okay, his hand's down, okay.
Mine was about the requirements for professional witnesses, but I think it makes more sense for Kirthi to run us, or for us to go through these.
And also I have like performance anxiety typing on this. So like, I will just put that out like in here. So on here. So again, I don't have any things on here, but like, dear team, what would you like to do in terms of having this?
I was thinking that we would not do this during a regular board meeting. This would be a hearing that we would have separately so we could have the time. I'm just going to state that again. That was what my thinking was, but there's nothing, others may disagree.
What date did you say a date during leadership? What date was that?
Well, we looked at several dates because this has to be resolved and done. We have to deliberate by the 15th of June. So some dates that were discussed, the most, and because we have people's vacation schedules, I think June 7th was the one date that we could see that the whole board would be in town.
Sorry, let me get back to my screen sharing all my proposals. now on public view.
June 7th, I think, is a Tuesday. And I think some board members leave the next day.
Did we
And I-
want to like, was there a conversation from earlier, like on extending the time? I mean, I'm assuming we don't want to, Laurel, but I was just curious, like, was there a conversation on?
I
checking
want it during a
the
regular
extension?
board meeting, and I want it where people will actually show up, and nobody's gonna show up on a Tuesday.
So I think our two board meetings in June are the 1st and the 22nd, right?
Yes, that's correct.
What's happening the 8th?
Well, people wanted, some people are going to be out of town, board members. Part of this is working around people's schedules.
Are they gonna be available by Zoom or?
I'm not sure. I don't have everyone's schedule in front of me. If you are, I think it might be Michelle that's going to be out of town. Correct me if I'm wrong, Michelle.
I'm out on the 1st, but
Yes, and I had you out on the 1st, which is why we were moving towards the 7th, that everyone could be here.
I have a flight at 10 o'clock that night.
On the 8th?
Yes.
Laurel, the 8th is not a regular board meeting anyway. It's already a special board meeting.
So
The 1st and the
it would be
22nd.
it'll be the 1st or the 22nd, you're saying?
Or the,
And it has to be before the 22nd, doesn't it?
It's got to be before the 15th.
Yeah.
So we have the 1st, which is coming right up and wouldn't be
Next
time. And Kirthy's gone. And the 8th is a work session that's been on our calendar. And I believe Michelle has a flight. And then we have the 22nd, which is after. So
did we have a conversation about checking on if we can extend this? Wasn't that a, like, did I miss?
Yeah, it sounds
understand
like
that?
it needs an extension. And one thing I do know that wasn't mentioned in this topic is that the person who made the complaint went on vacation right afterwards. So I don't think they could reach her for some reason. That's part of why everything was slowed down. So I think it behooves us to reach out to that person and see if they're amenable to that. If they're not, then I think it has to be the 1st. When I asked for it to be at a regular board meeting, I asked for it to be at a regular board meeting, not a side board meeting that nobody will see or attend.
well, if we notice it, Laurel, don't you think people, if they're interested, would attend?
Our regular board meetings are Wednesdays.
Well, the 8th would be a possibility if that would work if we started early enough. Just wait. I don't know if it would be a possibility, Michelle. That's a good question. And the
Yeah.
1st, Kirthy isn't going to be here, so.
I mean, I think with things coming up, like, I honestly, like, I mean, if they're being recorded and if this is not a thing on there, I would still be being on there. Like, it's the hearing component, right? Like, I mean, we're not voting on there, so I'm still planning on listening to everything that happens. I'm assuming they're going to be recorded, right?
I think we're supposed to vote.
Deliberation would happen after the hearing, Kirthy.
Okay.
Well, why don't we finish with the format and come back to the date?
I think the date is super important to find out.
It's
But
very
I-
important, but
Is it possible to do the meeting, as Kirthy said, on the 1st and do deliberation on, no, that kind of takes away from it too, doesn't it? Okay.
Sorry, I'm making life difficult.
so why don't we come back to getting the format and come back to the date? So we just can make some progress and see what
But
we're.
So your preference, though, is to do it during a board meeting. So,
A regular board meeting with people in attendance and with public comment.
okay, so that answers that one.
And is that can we do a hearing in the context of a regular board meeting? I figured it would be before, or it's because it's such a different format. I don't even know the answer to that.
So on the same day, Judy, maybe. it doesn't have to be exactly in the midst of it.
Okay, that's what, when you said public comment, so. I
Well,
So
didn't-
Judy, I have my hand raised. Can I ask a question?
Yeah, I'm sorry, I can't, with the screen share, I didn't see your hand. Go
I
ahead.
understand. No worries. That's why I spoke up. I'm wondering, Laurel, if you're okay with it, can we first find out if the complainant is amenable to a delay in receiving written word as to the decision that we make? Because it feels like that would be an important thing for us to vote on as a board, to request, more time.
Are you talking about asking her for the extension of the complaint?
Yes,
Yes, okay.
Okay.
but I mean, that's up to Laurel to decide if she even wants to ask for that. But that would allow us to take care of this when everybody is in town and able to give it the attention it needs.
Maya, I
Well,
think it's actually the board decision, but we want to consider what Laurel wants for sure. Yes, sorry, Laurel.
thank you, Maya. I think that that I'm thinking through the fact that we have very little time and we have enough reasoning to ask for this. If we didn't have reasoning, I would say no, but we have so much that we're doing that I think we have enough reasoning to ask for this, for an extension for it to make sense.
And how long of an extension are people thinking we want to ask for?
Well, Christine said it needs to be a date certain, so I would say we can make that date in August or September of next year. In
Oh,
case we need to leave a little bit of time. The reason I don't want to do it immediately is because we'll have either a new or the same superintendent, and we want to leave time for we don't want to assume what's going to be coming, so we want to leave time for them to get their feet under them a little bit for something like this.
Okay, I don't know how long of an extension we can ask for. I was thinking more it would be a couple weeks, not months, but
It needs to be during the actual year, not during summer.
well, we have a board meeting on the 22nd.
Is that what you meant, Maya?
Pardon me?
I thought you guys were talking about a real extension, not just 2 weeks.
I was thinking of a real extension. I don't think it hurts to ask, but I don't know.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock. No offense. But
I appreciate
I
it.
may like face plant on my keyboard in a few seconds. Yeah.
I don't know. Do we vote on taking an extension and what that extension would be? And if we're denied the extension, we still have to make this plan. So I think we need to make a plan and have plan A and plan B.
I'd be happy to make a motion on an extension if that needs to happen. I don't know how to do that. Like, I mean, is that what needs to happen? I can't lower my hand either, so I'm just gonna keep that up there. I'm not.
Well, I believe it's a board decision. So I think we have to do that, but I think we still have to proceed to make a plan because we could get denied the extension.
Right. I say we go along, we continue the plan. I appreciate Kirti's outline, and let's use that to continue the plan.
So yes, should we like, are we in agreement that we may want to like ask for an extension and then still continue the plan?
For
Yeah.
me.
Judy, if you slide over the screen share, you can see everybody, just FYI, so then you aren't minimized.
Right, but I can't read the screen then, but that's okay.
Well, I know, but if we're voting on something, you want to see our hands, not the
Oh,
screen.
right. Well, I think we have to vote on how long the extension we are asking for.
Right.
But
But still,
are we going to complete this first and then ask for the extension? Is that what we're talking about?
Yeah, There's a, yeah,
That's what I got from what you and
I think that would make sense. Let's make our plan and then we can have plan A and plan B for voting on the extension. So the first question is, so you want to do it during a regular board meeting. So that leaves us, we can notice a regular board meeting on June 8th. That is not, people still show up if we give them adequate notice. So I'm going to still put that on the table as June 8th. It's a Wednesday. I was going to also say June 22nd would be a smaller extension. And then to see if you wanted to say how long of an extension are we going to, yeah, whatever it would be. But during a board meeting or on a Wednesday, okay?
Well, if you're going to write that, you should probably write or September.
Or should I just say here, preferred to defer till September?
And is Michelle, is the 8th a day that you cannot make?
Not at 7 o'clock, no.
Well, if you, I think it would be important for you to be there, to do it at a time when you could be there.
Mhm.
I would like to be there.
Yeah, so I think Judy's got all the times of like who's here and not.
Let's move to documentation and come back to the date. How's that?
So are these looking at like, so like written statements, like should we put like, I'm assuming, like, would that be also, I mean, I'm, by assuming I'm making stuff up at this point since we don't have anything to assume.
Well, I assume the complaint is a written statement, so that's a piece of it. And then Laurel has this, I mean, you'd want to make a written statement of response. And we could extend to the complainant, whether she,
You can just put the complaint.
I'm gonna say the response.
The actual complaint.
Sorry, I was just making the formal complaints. I was gonna say, Christine, I think you're still on here. Can somebody make this sound not outlining when this is done? I'm just putting this.
The complaint, just in writing, I love the simplest is the better. The complaint,
yeah.
the response. I think,
and I would say yes, submit.
since this complaint is against me, but my complaint is against what was sent to the entire board. So I would say if board members want to make a response, they should be allowed to as well.
You mean you're going to ask, but then do you, just board members? We're going to be deciding, so I don't know.
So am I. So they should be able to make a response. This was based on a behavior that was not like nothing I've ever seen allowed by a supervisor. So while that's not my business, don't worry, Christine, you don't have to turn on your camera. What it is that what I'm proposing, and the board can decide on this, is that they can also make a response if they have found it offensive. I think that makes more sense because that's what I'm responding to. The fact that the video happened and what it meant.
So can I just ask, it just seems, I don't even know if, I guess there's no really legal parameters, but I'd like to get a little advice if we just invite some people to make a written testimony. Wouldn't the complainant also get to have other people put?
What, you mean like if they're staff members? Sure, I'd be fascinated to see what staff members would want to add to
I would put, not parameters, like, but I would like say that, like, you know, like 3 or 5 or whatever it is, like, you know, like I would, you know, be like, hey, and like a letter campaign from everybody on your staff. I mean, what I'm saying is like, we're gonna have to be parsing through all this stuff. So I guess I would like, if timing stuff, I don't know. I don't know if that's, like,
Can I ask what the purpose of the written testimony would be, or the written other documentation? Just
and
so
also
we can-
Gordon's got his hand up too, so.
Gordon?
Thanks. I mean, I like all this, and thank you, Kirthi, for providing the whatever, the structure we're working with. I think having written documentation is good. It'd be good to have it in at least a couple days before the hearing, I think. And that if people want to add other things, I just think it should be relevant, which would either mean that it adds other facts, or that it's like the expertise, which other people may know how to define that better. I was thinking, like, we talk about professionals in diversity and anti-racism. There are people who literally, like, their work is doing those kind of trainings or doing that kind of work. So I would think of that as the definition of expertise. But like, we don't want, as you said, Laura, we don't want character witnesses to say like, so-and-so is really nice or whatever. We're looking for either facts or expertise, I would think.
So I was thinking that, and then maybe I'm just misunderstanding. I was thinking like documentation was like the complaint, the response, and then if they were like submitting like, here's my, like, this is my testimony I'm going to be saying, or something, that something would be like reading as they were saying it, or, these are the things that we're going to be presenting, like that kind of documentation, as opposed to like,
you're
here's
right.
your, like your portfolio of like
Yeah.
evidence and research to support those things. Like I was thinking like, oh, I'm going to be presenting this speech, like people read, like, they're like, I'd rather you read it, as opposed to like, I don't want to stand up and speak, whatever it is. That's what I was thinking this was, but maybe I'm not.
I think you're correct, because it says documentation on your bullet point there. So I guess it would be, what's the word for it? Published documentation that supports either the complaintee or the respondent side. How about that, as far as documentation? And does that make sense?
Well, maybe it should be like, if you're going to have, we talked about having, if you wanted to have an expert witness or two, we can.
So that's down further,
But
Judy.
that would be, wouldn't that be the documentation that would be submitted
That they were coming?
from an expert, if they have material to submit?
Oh, I thought it would be under where they're at. So if they have material to submit, they'll probably present it when they talk, and then they'll present it to the board, like other people do when they come to the board. They'll say stuff and then they'll like give the papers to Lisa.
Okay. I wouldn't mind reading them before, but Christine has her hand up.
It's just, sorry. Hang on a second. Just a question to clarify your intention on the documentation. So are you wanting to allow, how much documentation are you wanting to allow? And I think you're wanting to have documentation that's relevant. So that could be a standard that you could apply.
Yeah.
And then I don't know, is it your intent to limit the documentation that comes in? And I'm not sure, after listening to this conversation, if your intent is to limit it, or if you're trying to make it open, or somewhere in between.
I don't know, honestly, like, I think there's a middle ground there. Like, Gordon, I get where you're coming at too, but I'm like, I think that with a professional witness and experts, like, I feel like they should present their stuff at the thing, because like, especially if it happens like next week versus like September, like there's amount of like, how much information are we taking in? But that's my feeling on this. And I was thinking the documentation, to a certain extent, when I had written this, and this could be different on here, obviously, like, because I just was taking my own notes on here, was to what the people speaking that are the complainant and the respondee were required to submit or bring to the thing that Laurel had mentioned, because she said, she wants written documentation on these things. So I was mostly like, what is that?
Okay, so it's not intended to exclude additional relevant documentation.
I mean, I wasn't thinking that, but I was just mostly going on because like Laurel had mentioned written and oral. So
Right.
I am like, what is the written? And what is the written? Do we want it submitted before or not? Like, we should put some things on those because it could just be like, hey, if it's written, like so-and-so is submitting like a massive letter campaign, or there's those things like, I don't like, that's not, I don't know if that's relevant to a hearing, you know, or if it's like, here's what's.
That's what's relevant is the big question. Is it supporting evidence about one of the people's, one of the other's arguments? Is it professional supportive or documentation that supports the argument? Is it, what is relevant is the question.
So it terrifies me to think somebody else gets to decide what's relevant, because so far it's not worked. The reality is, I think we should allow, when we get to the part where we say how many experts or witnesses get to talk, there should be like maybe up to 4. If we want to do that, that may be too much. We'll decide that as a board. And that they can hand that any time, any information they want to hand in prior to the hearing, because honestly, if we're going to probably be getting emails prior to the hearing, at least I hope so. We will be hearing what we need to look at this and the information that we're getting, and we need to be able to have done our homework, Alicia, before the hearing, so we can respond at that time and have a clear and fair conversation about what we have heard. I have to lean on hope in this world because that's all I got. And so because I've met all of you, I'm hopeful that you will get all the information that you get from both sides and look at this. And I'm also hopeful this isn't like a poke in anybody's eye, but an educational opportunity for the district and for the person. Doesn't mean I'm right. Doesn't mean I'll win this. Either way, the public is the only one who can remove me, but I'm hopeful for that. That's what I'm hopeful for. This should have been taken care of in-house. It was not. So now this is what we're doing. And I just want us to have the information and the clarity to make a choice. So really, I don't want to restrict it too much and say we only want it the day of, because that is kind of like going into an executive session, getting a 4-page document and then getting it taken away from us. There is no human way we have that information digested. And everybody knows that. It's impossible.
Yeah. Okay. So I got 2 questions here. One is that like, this seems to be snowballing on here. So in order to put these parameters on here and to just get through this, like, I'm assuming this has to happen right now. Or is it something that we can like find out on if we can get the extension? And then like, I mean, can this happen through like, this have to happen in this session, or can it happen through like an email? Does that get this in public laws or whatever it is? But like, I mean, I feel like,
I think I agree with you, Kirthi. We're not going to be able to wordsmith this document. So I think we should find out about the extension. Maybe if we have all the big ideas down here, and then maybe do a draft that people could respond to in a meeting, because I think we're going to get caught in every one of these points. And then it could be edited based on people's feedback from after the draft. So take this outline, make sure the big ideas are there, and then bring it back once we know if we get an extension or not. I see Maya's got her hand up, and Laurel.
You're
You're
muted, Maya.
Oops. I move to direct our council to inquire about a extension until the first meeting of September.
Second.
Did someone second it? Michelle, okay, great. Oh, so Maya moved and Michelle seconded. Any discussion? Gordon, is there-
Don't, oh, go ahead.
I don't know, Gordon and Laurel's hands are up. You both have comment, discussion. Okay.
Sorry, no, that was a mistake.
Okay.
Uh,
Laurel?
I only asked that we, and maybe I missed some of this when I was typing or something. But I only asked that we figure this out before then. And get this outline finished. Are you doing this? I thought I had heard, and tell me if I'm wrong, that we're sending the outline out to everybody and we're going to put what we want in it, and then we're going to digest it, or the new chair maybe digest it into what it's going to be. Christine said no.
Christine, what can we do?
Yeah, you're gonna have to have that conversation in a public meeting, so sorry, but that's
Can
just,
we,
gotta
can
put
we
in a
work out
public
the
meeting.
outline and then
Sure.
have a conversation?
We can share the outline, and then and because Eric had previously prepared a list that has kind of a lot of detail, and you can have the opportunity to look at that, because that'll maybe spur some things for people. And then you can look at those things and refine them in your next open public session.
Can we ask two people to take all of that and put it together to share in an open to?
You could create a subcommittee, yeah, to make a recommendation to you about the procedures, and that would be another way of going about it.
Okay, Maya?
I just want to remind that if we do get the extension to have the hearing at the first meeting in September, we will still have 2 regularly scheduled meetings in August.
Yes.
So just to point that out, not to say that we don't want to do this right away, but just pointing out that it leaves us with more than the very limited and very packed schedule we have for June.
But
Can we, Christine, would we vote on this first and then vote to have a subcommittee that convenes to work through the details of this?
Yeah.
Or would that be an amendment to the original motion? They feel separate.
Yeah, I think it would be an amendment. Yeah, I think you got to do an amendment.
Do I amend my own? Can I amend my own motion? Or
No.
should somebody amend my motion to move for a subcommittee to hammer out the details of the hearing?
You could take them separately as well.
I would take them separately. Let's
Okay.
take them separately. Yeah.
Great, then let's do that separately.
So the motion on the table is we want to ask for an extension till September 1st. And we have a second.
First meeting of September, is it? I don't know if it's September.
September, yeah, first meeting in September. Okay. Any other discussion about that? Okay, all those in favor of the motion, raise your hand. Looks like the motion passes unanimously. Okay, now you want to make a second motion about setting up a subcommittee to do?
I would love to do that. I would like to move to establish a subcommittee to set the guidelines and parameters of the hearing to bring back to the board in a public setting to vote on.
Do I have a second? Michelle. So Maya moves and Michelle seconds. Any discussion?
Well, do we need to
That's about who's on the committee right now.
Yeah, do we need to name who would be on the committee, or can that happen separately, or what's the deal for that step, Christine?
I would just do it separately.
Okay,
I,
all right, that's,
I
I'm all about separate also. Let's just, amendments are like sandwiches that are no fun.
All those in favor of the motion, raise your hand to set up a committee. Okay. We have a unanimous vote. Okay.
Okay.
So now we want to name people. We can have a committee of 2 or 3 people. Do we have any nominations or volunteers? Alicia,
Quick question. This would have to be noticed, right? So.
Yeah.
Okay.
it's a
All right.
subcommittee. If we're setting up the subcommittee with the task, it would be noticed.
Well, I don't know how everybody feels, but I would like to put my name forward for that.
Okay, Alicia's volunteered. Gordon?
I would also volunteer.
Okay,
I saw
Alicia,
Michelle had her hand up as well. Michelle?
Right.
Okay, awesome. I have another motion. I move to name Gordon, Alicia, and Michelle as the board members that make up the subcommittee deciding on hearing details.
do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, great. Maya moves and Kirti seconds. Any conversation about the committee membership? Okay, all those in favor?
Did you want to have my, wait, I wanted to do my stump speech at 10.
Sorry,
Okay.
you aren't being challenged. So all those in favor, raise your hand, say aye. Aye.
And
Okay.
I'll send out my very crappy looking outline as soon as I can.
Would you send it to
Yeah.
the committee members, please?
I
Kirti?
will.
Thank you. All those in favor, the motion passes unanimously and thank you. All right.
I
Yes,
didn't,
but you're muted, Laurel.
I didn't vote. I have a question. What is this committee doing? They're not deciding what we do, right?
They're drafting, based on the conversation we had tonight and the information we have, a proposal that the board will then vote on and decide on. So we'll have a document to look at to be able to change, edit, accept, move forward. So they aren't deciding.
I have post-traumatic stress from the superintendent search for all the things that wasn't supposed to happen, that happened all in subcommittee that I am concerned about. So I want to make sure that there is no time that any final decisions are made in subcommittee, even though we said that for Alma as well, but it still seemed to happen constantly. So I want to make sure that I don't want to be blindsided by anything. That's
Well, I
all.
think they have one task, which is to bring this draft to the full board to discuss and vote on. But Gordon, did you have a comment?
No, I would just say I promise whatever, I make the Vulcan promise or something.
Great. The expectation of the committee to bring it forward to the board to do the final decision and vote. Okay. All right, we have one more agenda item, and that is about the discussion and plan for safety at board meetings and safety for board members. And this came up actually a while ago, but we had our last meeting, we had some issues that felt unsafe and some repercussions afterwards. So I'm just going to give you an update of what we have learned so far. Excuse me. Yes, Eric, do you have something?
Sorry, I just wondered if you needed me to stay within the meeting or if I may excuse myself and have dinner.
You're excused. Thank you.
Thank you. Have a nice evening.
So in trying to find out what, Maya,
I'm sorry to interrupt, but I did notice that Laurel said she didn't vote either way. Do we need to recall that vote? Because aren't we all supposed to vote one way or the other?
I don't know. Yes, we are. And I thought I saw her hand up.
She said she didn't vote, so I don't mean to put words in your mouth, Laurel.
No, I appreciate you answering my questions, and yes, thank you.
So it can be, so with a Laurel's vote, in addition, it's a unanimous vote. Okay. So the conversation was, do we need policies? Do we need procedures? How are we going to address and make sure that our board meetings feel safe? And we have some policies and procedures to follow to hopefully be proactive about anything happening, but also knowing how we're going to respond. So we've done a little bit of research. I haven't yet found any policies that deal with this directly. I've reached out to some other elected bodies that we thought had policies, but they don't have any. And I reached out to the Oregon School Board Association just to see if they were aware of any school boards that had these policies. And so far I haven't gotten any examples. It doesn't mean I just thought it would be a good starting point. What we did receive was the toolkit that we forwarded to everyone. And this has not been distributed or published yet, but it's pretty close to being final. And it's a Oregon School Safety Guide toolkit that was developed by the Oregon School Board Association and COSA, with some guidance and some ideas for creating more safety. And I was thinking we can immediately, some of the immediate things I'd like to see us consider today was there's some example statement in there that we could add to our statement before public, and I'll point that out, before we give public testimony. So we could, which really talks about how we'll respond to actions from the audience. We talked about having security at some or all of our meetings. We got some recommendations of security, and we need to talk through if we want to do that. Another one of the recommendations we can do immediately is having board safety training, and we got some resources of who would do that. And then we could talk also about developing a policy, but looking to see what that's going to take a little more time. I think we need to have immediate action and then develop a policy. So that's where we are right now. Laurel.
Yeah, I'd like to talk about why I asked for this meeting. And it's fascinating that that hasn't been brought up, but not surprising. And also I was told I'd have a meeting today with someone that they would reach out to me, and I don't have any, nobody's reached out to me that I saw. So anyway, the board meet on April 26th or 27th, I asked Christine and I think Maya and Judy about removing or making actually I asked specifically about a policy around people that come to meetings and make public outbursts, specifically racial harassment outbursts. And that person is, we know who it is. It's somebody who comes to pretty much every board meeting. The answer I got was tepid at best. It was basically, I'm not sure, we're gonna look, but maybe, it was frustrating, but I thought maybe things were actually happening, because it's hard to believe that somebody, even though I don't know why I found it hard to believe, I guess I believe in hope, I guess, but that somebody was working to see that people were making outbursts about race towards me, and that no action was happening at a district level, nothing. So at the last board meeting, I think we all were there, so I don't have to explain it a whole lot. But when that person stood behind all of those people who most likely were carrying concealed weapons, and tried to force an escalation and was specifically mentioning my race and who I am and that, and definitely trying to gear it towards me. Other community members, other people that were there have all said, you would have been the target if anything had happened. I asked for, and then it continued, and because I had mentioned white supremacy, and because it's real, that was also part of it. So there were several steps to it, and it depending on what your lens is, it was either like a few things were happening, or if you were me, you were a target and possible real target. And how long has it been since Buffalo? The only difference between being maybe a target and really a target is somebody making a horrible decision. That's the only difference. You don't know when that's going to happen. So I would like to say that weekend, I asked for something to happen. I didn't hear anything. I forced the issue. I finally heard something back, and they said I could find a room to take my family to, because I'd been giving more information about this person that was very concerning and scary. And I went to look for a room, which, let me just tell you, don't look for a room while a track meets in the room, in the town. Maybe you knew this already. I have a home, so I don't do that. I couldn't find a room. I thought I'd found a room. We went there. I was looking for a place to stay with my children until midnight and could not find it. And then was back at my house and finally exhausted mentally and physically, and just went to bed. I turned on the camera subscription for the cameras at my house, because until then I just kept it where I could look at it if anything was happening, but I'm paying for it now. And so I can see if anything happens, and if anything happens to me, I can, or my family, that there'll be a recording of it. I had to call Judy. I had to call people. I was put in the position of me running around when it should have been, we just provided something for my security. We should have a system which just says, we see this has happened, we're providing this for your security. We probably won't have to do this for a long period of time, but it should happen. And it also should happen at the board meetings. The fact that the way that it's dealt with is kind of like, well, maybe we should do this, or kind of this, or just the way we talked about it at the beginning of this meeting is so piecemeal and not important, because the people who are talking about it don't feel like they're the target. I need to know. I can't come to a board meeting until I know we are going to take this very seriously, for not just me, for all our board members. As a soldier, and I was thinking, when that person walked back in the room and I thought they had been removed from the building, and if they had not, my whole body went into activation, which I hadn't felt in a long time. And my thought was, I need to get myself out. I need to help Alicia out. Sorry, Alicia, I know you're very competent, but I just, in my head, I have a job to do, and I'm going to try to get it done. And I'll make sure you're okay with it. But I was thinking in terms of a soldier, what you do to get. Also, I want doors in the back of that room. Where does the back of that room go to? Because that room is horrific. All I could think was I was a trapped animal. We need doors put in there so we have exits directly behind us to get out. So, sorry, that was a segue, but something very important that I needed to say and not forget. That is what I wanted to talk about. I do not want to do what we do constantly, is talk it to death and not get anything done, and be like, in 3 months, maybe we'll get something done. I would really like to see, and I know it's a possibility, we could have had security in place by now. But I was told, oh, contracts, figuring things out, da 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 da. I've been told by other people in other public realms that that is not accurate. And things can happen right away. And so either we need to hire actual security people for 4J that do not go into schools, but attend things like this, or when we know it's going to be like this, or we need to hire a contract with people that we trust that are at high levels. And we need to have them there at every board meeting.
And Laurel, we do have that information. It took a while to get referrals for them, and I did follow up. Some agencies actually employ, like the eWeb, for example, has their own security people. I do have a lot of information. We're going to reach out to the security firm that has come highly recommended, and hopefully they'll have space. People said they're very busy, but we'll see. Hopefully they'll be able to come. So there's.
I just wanted that background to be part of this discussion because it felt like we were starting in a place that was really adorable, but then none of this is adorable. This was a hellish week.
I'm really sorry I didn't frame this correctly, but there are concrete actions that we want to have someone, a security person, or if it's contracting with the Eugene Police Department, if we have to have someone with that kind of authority. There's also a way to do a safety assessment of our building, just like what you're saying. Do we have the exits right? You bring someone in that gives you a safety assessment that tells you what you need to do, and it might require some changes, but we have to request, and it's usually, again, someone from law enforcement that knows those safety procedures, but if people have other recommendations, and then the training for us as well. So those are all things that we have people we can reach out to. We just have to get them scheduled.
And what does the training entail? Is this in the something you sent?
Yeah, in the toolkit, it talks about it, and I know eWeb board did this where the security people did training for the board about what are safety measures. I don't know what the exact content is, but specific trainings aimed at how would you react? What do you do? What do you look for? I assume.
I also would like added to this as part of this is that if we have, and I've learned this since from talking to people on other public boards, that if somebody says something racially offensive, that they can be stopped. We don't have to sit there for 3 minutes to listen to somebody tell us that we're horrible brown people or whatever. We can say, this is enough, it's done. All right, and it doesn't have to get to the part where they're calling us names. We can just say, this is not allowed in this property. And that needs to happen because when I asked this information before, I was given such a lukewarm response to horrible behavior. I felt we could have addressed this by now, but we decided it was, for some reason, wasn't important enough to leadership. And that is where we are now.
So Laura, let me just respond to one more thing, and I know people have their hands up, but we do in our policy KGB, number 2, it's called public contact on district property. It talks about use or engage in abusive verbal expression. This is prohibited. Use or engage in abusive verbal expression or physical conduct that interferes with the performance of students, event officials, or sponsors of approved activities. I think we would definitely fall in that category, but we at least have something. It's not maybe enough, and we need to expand a policy, but I think the decision of the board has to be, when do you actually call someone or have security there and remove them? So that's what we'll have to decide. Maya.
So I just want to first start by saying that what you are feeling, Laurel, and experiencing is very real and very scary, and very valid. I'm with you on all of the things that you're saying, and shared very similar frustrations as to how our meeting went down last week. What I'm hearing is that there's some immediate things that we can do and some longer term things that we can do. And to just list them separately, it feels like tonight we could move and vote to schedule a safety assessment. We could move and vote to pursue security at our meetings until further notice. We could move and vote on compensating you for your cameras and the subscription to the video or whatever it is that you are doing. And then the last thing that we could do tonight is with that policy KGB, that part that Judy read is just the beginning. If you go further down, and Superintendent Vanderkar sent this to us in email and highlighted all of this, but the other section that is interesting and worth noting and relevant to this is that it is prohibited to impede, delay, or otherwise interfere with the orderly conduct of the district's educational program or any other activity taking place on district property which has been authorized by the district, which is what we saw happen last week. It is also prohibited to willfully violate other district policies, administrative regulations, or school rules designed to maintain public order on school property, which we saw. And the final part of that policy is that persons who are violating or threatening to violate the above rules may be issued a trespass citation, ejected from the premises, excluded from district-approved activities temporarily or permanently, and or referred to law enforcement officials. I think that it's important that at our next meeting that we read that policy to our public. And I think it would be worth going so far as to communicate that policy to our stakeholders, including our parents, so that people know what our expectations of behavior is. I also think that the long-term things that I'm hearing requested is the training. I don't see that happening immediately, but that could be something that happens soon. Infrastructure changes to our building based on that safety assessment. And then a crafting of policy regarding action that we will follow pursuant to a board member having their safety threatened, so that we know there's no needing to find out if you can get a hotel room. Our policy says you can go get a hotel room. We know that our policy will say, you know, whatever it is that we outline in that policy, we clearly need a policy. And based on behavior across the state and across the country, this is a policy that hopefully we won't need to use, but should absolutely be in place. So that's just me trying to summarize the two, you know, short-term and long-term things that I think we could do. But I personally do not feel comfortable coming back in person until we have security in place. And I think that we need to do that sooner than later, because we need to demonstrate that we are that this is not something that we will tolerate. And if we continue to have virtual meetings, yes, we're all at home and we're safe, but what we're saying is that the behavior supersedes our need to meet in person. So I think that one's really important. I would like KGB to be articulated publicly, and I would like for the cameras and your subscription to be compensated by the district, much as the hotel rooms would be. And the safety assessment might be medium range plan.
Oh,
We need
Michelle.
action. We need action tonight. We need decisions and we need a plan.
And those were the list. Yeah, thank you, Maya. Michelle.
Thank you, Maya, for that very complete list. Thank you, Laurel, for voicing your concerns and what you experienced. I just want to bring up a point that there were children at the meeting last week, and it's not acceptable for children to have witnessed any of that. It's not acceptable for me to have witnessed any of that. but yeah, I can't stress enough how much of a priority this is. It's been happening regularly. I saw it happen before I started participating on the board. So it's been ongoing, and we really need to make sure we're safe.
Thank you. Gordon.
Thanks. I guess I want to address both the meeting and even more the home security issue. You know, what happened last week is, you know, somebody essentially conveyed the message that the Black woman on the board doesn't want to let you talk about guns because you're white, to an audience of people who presumably are largely gun owners, and to, we have no idea who potentially listening online or watching a recording of. Like, you make a statement like that, you can't control where it goes. And I think that's incitement to violence and incitement to race-based violence, whether it was intended that way or that's how it functions. So I don't know what we're legally to do. I mean, I would support what Maya said, but I also think maybe somebody who does that needs to be, you know, barred from board meetings for a couple of months or something like that. I don't know. But I also think home security, I mean, in the time and era that we're living in, something like that is absolutely serious. I mean, hopefully it turns out we just wasted a lot of money, but I feel like, honestly, like compensating somebody for having a home video system is not enough. And I think if we thought there was a credible threat to the mayor, we wouldn't say get a home video system and we'll compensate you. We'd say the police are going to drive by your house every 2 nights and there's going to be a big home security system and you're not going to watch it. Some professional, somebody else is going to watch it and they're going to send somebody out if they see something. And I think that's the kind of thing that's the level of seriousness of home protection that I think we need to provide to Laurel O'Rourke at this point. And I think we need to do it right away. I'm sure it'll cost money, but it's something we can afford. And I think that's what we owe to any of us who end up in this situation.
So Gordon, I think the superintendent actually did some research on homes. Before I knew Laurel, we knew Laurel had one and have identified one that's been used elsewhere that does get read by law enforcement. So it is being monitored 24 hours a day by someone else. So that's when we definitely wanted to show her. I don't know, there was going to be a security assessment of her house today, I thought, but apparently it didn't happen. So
I mean, I know that after the shooting at the Pittsburgh synagogue, at the synagogue in Eugene, we had like a giant tripod video thing that not only did the police read, but you couldn't walk by there and not know that you were under police surveillance. I think it was there for 2 weeks or something. So I think we have to take it that seriously. Thank you.
Kirthi.
Yes to everything Gordon just said, because I do think we should take it that seriously. I shouldn't be surprised, honestly, after 10 years of living in Eugene, and yet I still am on here. And I understand to a certain extent that, like, as an Asian woman, I have a certain amount of privilege here that Laurel doesn't on there. And I was appalled, like, at what went on and came home to, like, people freaking out here because they were just hearing what was going on the news, right? And as it is just on here. So I am not only just mad about the safety situation, I am appalled that we let a live feed continue running that allowed a platform for these people to continue talking and just let them keep going. I feel like as a district, we do owe an apology for that to happen, whatever it is. I mean, free speech, whatever the key point is, that we allowed someone to essentially overtake what was essentially a board meeting where we are allowed to speak and have protocols in place, which again, we're sure thing on here. And we weren't, like, even the fan here, you had to sign up to speak on there, to essentially hijack a secretary's microphone and continue to spew this on a live feed that's recorded now and is still like on our website on here. So I think there's a message that we need to address to our public about how we are viewing this and how we are viewing that thing too, that we owe to our children and our teachers and to essentially all the communities of color that we are dealing with, that this is serious. I mean, it's one thing for our board members, which is an immediate safety protocol too, but there is something that we owe to our community as well too, about what we are trying to say in these things, right? And who we allow in, who we allow to speak. And like we talked about giving the audience that was there a time to sign up and a time to go. And Maya did a fantastic job of walking through that and getting that to happen, those few pieces. But the fact of the matter is we still had a big chunk of time in there where that wasn't the case, right? And so that also needs to be addressed, I think, in a way that makes sense for all of us. I do think that, I mean, I didn't feel safe. I haven't, like, I'm a little short person, like there's other things on there. And I mean, like, I don't feel safe attending back in there. I certainly would not recommend a Laurel going anywhere near there until there are safety protocols in place. So like, as soon as we can vote on the things that Maya did, I am like 100% in things there too. But I think there's more that needs to happen just to address how we're taking this seriously, like what we are as a board allowing to happen, and how we're going to address these moving forward. So like there's the actual immediate safety pieces of it. There's the medium and long-term safety pieces of it too, but it's also I mean, I think we missed an opportunity to immediately address that, but I don't think we should be holding any longer either on waiting on what we should be saying to the public on like what we allowed to happen essentially on there. And yeah, we weren't prepared for it. So a lot of it was taken out of our hands on there because we didn't have the right safety in place to be able to address that. I get that. And none of us were going to go in there and fight for a microphone out of somebody's hand, but I'm pretty sure we had control over the board to be able to cut that off at the time, right? So I just wanted to bring that to and not be remiss in like addressing that. So I didn't have much out there, but that was my little rant for today.
Thank you. So Maya, are you thinking can you make a motion? Is that what you're thinking?
I just want to say two things first, and then I can make a motion or make a series of motions. But I want to just amplify the point Kirti just made and add to the list the practice of letting the mic stay hot during recess, and not only letting it stay hot, but you know, we talk a lot about the practice has always been fill in the blank, and the practice has always been that those recess moments are edited out before the video is posted. And in this case, it was not edited out, which gave that platform not just a one-night stand, but a long-term relationship with the public. And I know I asked about that. As soon as I heard about it, I talked to both Judy and Alicia, and it was of great concern to me. And I never heard back as to whether that was going to be remedied or what the reason was behind it. I know, and I think that if it hasn't been edited and replaced with an edited version, that needs to happen immediately. The other thing I just want to clarify for Gordon, because I have it right in front of me, but violation of KGB, Gordon, does mean that someone may be issued a trespass citation, ejected from the premises, excluded from district approved activities temporarily or permanently, and or referred to law enforcement officials. And that's not what happened. And we need to, and it was brought up and we were told there was nothing that we can do. And now we know, thanks to the email that we received with this policy in it. And now our public attending our meetings needs to know that as well.
So Christine has something she wants to say about the policy. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. There are some real limitations to applying that policy in the context of a public meeting. So the First Amendment, folks are given a pretty significant right to petition their elected officials and to attend board meetings. And in the not too distant past, the city of Portland was found to have violated the First Amendment when they ejected, or not just ejected someone. You can eject pretty easily, but it's a long-term barring of someone from coming back to the meetings. That's a problem. So I agree, and I previously informed Laurel and Judy both that we can look at a policy that is more addressed to disruption of public meetings. I think that's a great idea, but it's not the case that we can have a bar for a long period of time. So just to make you aware of that.
So just to clarify, I'm not talking about necessarily First Amendment. I'm talking about the component of that policy that is the disruption of district proceedings.
Right.
And we have a person in particular who has done that on repeat.
So the standard for disruption is actual disruption. And I wasn't there last time, so I have nothing to say about that. But once a person makes a disruption, you can absolutely trespass that person from that meeting. So you can eject them from that meeting. And I would do it after some warnings, of course. But there is a problem, even though KGB is written for a school setting where administrators have much more control and where members of the public have no right to come onto our school property. They do have a right to attend board meetings. And so that's where it's just not a constitutionally comparable situation. I am really interested in seeing what we can do to promote, safety and meetings that are effective and not disrupted. But I just want to caution you, you can't just apply KGB and eject people on a long-term basis. That's just constitutionally not, I mean, you could do it, but it's highly likely to be challenged and you're highly likely to be found to have violated their constitutional rights.
Michelle.
I don't know what the details of what happened in Portland. I don't know the details, and I don't know if that's possibly a false equivalence, because I don't know if someone's safety was threatened in that situation. I don't know if someone was particularly targeted. And in this case, I know you weren't there, Christine, but that's what happened. And so I do believe that First Amendment rights do not apply in this case.
Superintendent Vanderkar.
Laurel's hand was up before mine, though.
I thought you wanted to respond to that, but maybe
Oh,
not.
no, I had my hand up long before Michelle started talking.
Laurel.
So it's fascinating that we're mentioning First Amendment for this. And so also entirely problematic. And I hope at some point we have leadership that sees something of this level and acts on it. And it didn't start on the 18th. It needed to be acted on. It should have been acted on. I find it problematic that our council is more than happy to tell me that I can't use social media and do all these things, and to the point where I say, please don't talk to me because you are violating my First Amendment rights when you tell me these things. But at this case, and because we may possibly at some point, maybe be sued, we shouldn't do it. And we should all be left as victims, as targets. I find this highly problematic and a failure of leadership. of absolute failure of leadership. I would like to know, even if we don't always agree, that leadership understands that part of their job is to help keep this place safe and us safe and themselves safe. Everybody freaking safe in these buildings. And it's absolutely the most important thing. And if you mess up and we get sued, I bet we all support you for messing up for the right reason. But really, if we have to tell somebody they can't be in our building because they are racist and horrible and oppressive, then that is not a problem for 90% of the places I go to and I work at and I'm part of. For some reason in this district, it is a problem. I don't understand, and I don't understand because it's not appropriate or correct. We just hear that it's happening. It honestly, we shouldn't even have to talk about this because it should have been dealt with the very first time it happened. And there shouldn't be a discussion of maybe something. It feels like because you're not a target, district leadership all looks very the same because they're not targets. It's not important. When it was masking, they were targets. So it wasn't all the same. We had so much security at that point. But this obviously isn't part of them. So it's not important and it's not relevant. But I'm here to tell you, it is very important. It's very relevant because you will be quite surprised that they're not very good shots. And this is not hyperbole. We know this because we watch the news. Thank you.
Superintendent Vanderkar.
So I had my hand up to talk about how we knew who was in the room and how we didn't know some other people were in the room. So people can go online, sign up to talk at the meeting, tell us if they're in person or not in person. So if we have 15 people sign up, then if you talked at the last meeting, you wouldn't go this meeting. You know, there's like a bit of an algorithm that goes with it, trying to share the opportunity. And to sign up to be in the room, you just do the same thing. You sign up, and we started because there was a request to let more people in, that if there was room, we would let everyone that signed up to be in there in, and then we knew how many chairs we had left and we would let people in. So there are people that were in that room that we didn't know who they were. And then there were people in that room that we knew who they were. So the sign up for speaking was done, and it's done by Monday. And what I can do is give you some, I don't know, all the data tomorrow. I don't have it at my fingertips, but if we want to change how that is done, like who gets to come in so we know ahead of time who's going to be there, we would need to discuss that, because we didn't know who was coming on last Wednesday. And we've also tried to open it up so that people can come in and be part of the process. So it's really hard to know who's going to be there and who's not. And I think the board needs to talk about that, but I could try to get you some detail. I can walk through each one of those, who's in the room and who's not in the room. And I know that I've been criticized for not being prepared, but we just didn't know who was coming. So I'm gonna put my hand down, or my hand is down, and that's what I wanted to say.
Sorry, Gordon, you're next.
Thank you. And for me, the issue is not I don't want to in general restrict the number of people or people. I don't need to know everybody who's coming. The issue is when something like this happens, how do we respond? And do we, and is part of the response, I understand the response can be to have somebody, have the police remove somebody for trespassing, to press charges, but the thing about banning somebody for some period of time makes sense to me. And one of the things that just strikes me is at the start of every meeting, the chair reads a statement saying that people are not allowed to criticize leaders of the district in public. They have to go through the complaint process. And I don't see how that can't be a violation of free speech, but this kind of thing, has to be allowed. So it seems to me that I'm certainly not a lawyer at all. I'm certainly not a First Amendment lawyer, but I think that something that is that functions as incitement to violence against somebody is in a different category. And it certainly would be in a different category for me in terms of feeling comfortable about taking a stand on something, even if there was some risk of us being sued. So A, that's where I'm at. B, I want to figure out how we're going to make a decision about this. And maybe we can take a while to make the decision about how we want to have our next in-person meeting. But I don't think we can take time to make decision about home security. And I don't know the exact right thing, but I feel like something like, I want Laurel and leadership to meet with Carrie Skinner or whoever the right people are in the district tomorrow and have a plan that's acceptable to everybody by the end of tomorrow. I don't think the whole board needs to be involved, but something like that. I would like to not leave this meeting without a commitment of something that's going to happen tomorrow on that.
Gordon, I just want to say that was actually supposed to happen today. So tomorrow is already a day late. I agree that that should happen.
Have a meeting that results in a plan and not just advice or kicking around policies.
No, that was exactly what was supposed to happen, to see the security system in place, to see if there was a better one to have, etc. So I think Carrie is signed up. I don't know why that connection didn't make today. Wasn't made today, but I did send around in that toolkit a statement and that I think we could immediately adopt. It's one that's to read at the meetings, which I think addresses that. And it's about criticism, by the way, not of leadership. It's just of any staff in the district is the initial statement that we make now. But it says, welcome to the meeting. It's important for everyone here to know that public comments is wanted and valued. Please note that the board will not immediately respond to public comment, but will take it into account for future deliberation and discussion. There are a few rules that guide our public comment process. They are important to remember. We'll remind you if you forget. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. The speaker should state their name and if they reside within the district. The speaker should be aware of the entire audience in the room, including children, and should refrain from the use of profanity, hate speech, or threatening or intimidating language. Speakers may offer criticism of district operations or programs, but the board will not hear comments concerning specific district personnel. Please submit such comments to the employee's supervisor or in accordance with the district complaint procedure. And that's one we could start using immediately. I think it covers the kind of things that we want to say. It's on page 16 in what I sent around, and I'm happy to send that around again. Kirthi.
I just wanted to add to that. I also honestly don't care if I'm assuming that from what I'm understanding, there doesn't seem to be anything precluding us from a temporary ban, correct? At least, right? On those. Gordon, to your point too, I also am like, some things like we're only in a lawsuit if somebody actually pursues it on that end too. And that's probably a chance I'm willing to take because I think safety is more important on that. But I'm assuming I would like to add to Maya's list of things to also take measures on the temporary ban. I don't know how that works, if that's a vote or whatever it is, or what the next measures are on, but like I would like, in order to add to our safety protocols, like I would like to make that happen.
Is that something we can do, Christine, the temporary ban?
Yes.
No, I mean, I'm really concerned about that one. You may be able to do it on a very temporary basis. You certainly can eject. But right now you don't have any standards at all and by which you are going to exercise that. And so I think you've got the opportunity to develop a policy potentially, but I would be concerned about I mean, I can't advise you to go forward with that kind of a plan right now. You can, of course, ignore my advice, but I am not recommending that you do so. I did do some research into this when, about a month and a half ago, and my concerns in this area are significant, and I'm here to help you get the best possible policy, but I can't advocate for a temporary ban.
Did you watch the board meeting? Did you watch the video?
I did not, no.
I think it's
heard
really
it.
important.
Or
that you
listen
have
to the audio, like,
that.
yeah, like I would.
The video is the only one that shows everything. And I don't think you can talk on this unless you've seen that. Inciting people that had weapons on them. What are they called? Sovereign citizens, somebody said, or I don't know the names of all these hate groups. But you are basically, I don't think you are prepared to help finish raising my children. You aren't prepared for, just click out, because the reality is the email I had to write to Judy to say, hello, I will hold in the entire district leadership accountable if something happens to me. And I have had to tell my partner that. I had to tell my partner that. How dare you, Christine, lean on legalese? How dare you?
My job is to advise the board.
Protect the district, not people. I'm a human being, and I have children. I have people that care about me. I have a right to exist as a human being outside of the legal realm. I ask my board, not the district leadership, because I have gotten nothing from them, to please make a decision different from what you've been told, because there's a district that has no children and there's a person who has 5.
Gordon, do you mind if I let Alicia go since she hasn't spoken?
Okay.
So I'm pondering as a board if our best option is to none of us meet in person until we have a chance to look at what is possible for exclusion and what are the criteria. I know there's a lot of work there, but and I do love to meet in person, but I'm just wondering if that is our best bet, that we make sure that all our members feel safe. So just a thought.
Gordon.
I heard Christine say that we don't have criteria now for saying when somebody would be barred. But I thought the proposal is precisely that we establish criteria and that incitement be one of those criteria. And obviously there are things for which somebody can be ejected, which means they're barred for the rest of that meeting, which in our case could be 5 or 6 hours. And I guess to me, it seems important enough that I would be willing to take the risk of somebody suing us, and we'll figure out what to do when we get sued, to say that to have a policy that is both a very clear statement to the public and protective of our members.
So are we ready to take some action on the short-term solutions and parse this out? I'm gonna list them because they're the ones I mentioned as well in Maya. So if we take a recess, that we want to, I'm just gonna add this one, that if there's a recess for disruption or whatever, but the mics are not on and the video's not on, that we make a policy, that we immediately instruct the people that are doing the recording to take those off live.
Are we going to, can we just do these motions one at a time and talk about them and go through them? Because we're going to continue to say them over and over and not actually make motions. And then
right.
we have the discussion.
Why don't we do that one first then? Maya,
I move that when we go to recess, the mic is turned off.
second?
And video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I amend the motion to include video.
You're muted, Judy.
It's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? Laurel?
I'm trying to understand this one, and I'm sure it has to do with escalation and stopping escalation. But I think it may be that we may have to either maybe clear the room if we go to recess for because of behavior or something like that instead, because the reality is it doesn't mean that the reason we know that one of the reasons we know this person is I don't know what you want to call them, but well, let's just say racist and inappropriate, is because of the hot mic. And that people were telling us while we were in recess, please be careful, they're saying horrible things. So I have a great concern of saying we don't want to know horrible things, so we need to stop it. But I also get the other side of that is we shouldn't be, as a district, broadcasting horrible things. So I'm trying to understand other ways we could, and maybe it would probably be a different motion, but in order for me to be able to vote on this, thank you.
We have Michelle. We have 3 people lined up. Michelle?
Yeah, I'm also questioning, it's not, my concern was not so much that the recess was recorded. My concern was that the recess was unedited. And there's a difference because we could hear what was being said when we were in recess. I wanted it saved, but I didn't want it rebroadcast in its entirety.
Or live broadcast.
Or live broadcast.
So is there a way to do that, to not let it be broadcast, but continue to be recorded? I don't know technologically if that's possible.
I don't either, but I wrote it down to see if I can find out. Steve's not on, so.
Maya?
I was going to suggest maybe, Michelle, do you want to amend the motion for now to be specifically about not posting an unedited version of the recess? And then we can figure out the technology for the first portion later.
Yeah, so I move not to share an unedited version of future board meetings.
And I accept that amendment.
Okay, any discussion, Gordon?
I guess to me, it just, I assume it was a mistake. It seems to me common sense that we would turn off the mics when the meeting is not in session for all kinds of reasons, but one of them being that I think people who want a platform, then it's attractive to get up and pontificate when you have an audience, not just in the room, but a broadcast audience. And I guess I wonder if there's a way, if we think there's something going on that we want to know about, somebody could be in the room or something like that without broadcasting it. Broadcasting it just feels like too big a price to pay. Then it invites like the counter meeting of anybody who wants to say whatever they want to the broad public by broadcast while the board is in recess, which just doesn't seem the thing like we want to encourage. And so if there's some other way, either for somebody to stay in the room if we're concerned about what's going to be said and report on it, or to record it, that's all fine, but I wouldn't broadcast it.
Maya?
Well, I agree with Gordon. I don't know if we need to vote on the amendment first, but I'm just gonna add on. I agree with Gordon, and it's my understanding that when we go to recess, somebody is in the room. The room does not get cleared entirely of staff. So in that sense, it's not a recording, but at least we have a witness without offering a platform. But that doesn't relate directly to the amended motion, which is to commit to not putting out the unedited version, which my understanding is it's still out with the unedited version as of this moment.
So let's vote on that. That one is a little more straightforward, I think. Okay. Any more discussion about the amendment that says we should not put out, we shouldn't be putting out the unedited version? Gordon?
I support it. I would just like to know who's responsible for that. I mean, it seems to me that I would guess that's a communications thing, but I'd want to know who's, that doesn't have to be right now, but maybe at the next meeting or someplace.
I believe it's probably Carrie Delph, but I don't know because I think she posts them, but maybe not. So we can find out. Okay, all those in favor of that, raise your hand. We have, okay, 7 people voting yes and no, so it passes unanimously. Now back to the original motion, I believe, which was to turn off the mic and the video during a recess.
Didn't we amend it? So, or is
Well,
that?
But we definitely amended not to post it, but the original motion was to turn off, to not record it.
I thought we amended it in order to say if it's recorded, we have the recording and that we won't post it to the public to give a platform to that kind of behavior. I thought
So-
that was the
So then we have to vote no if we don't want to pass this, but we still have to go back to the original motion.
We have to go back to the original motion because we amended it. And so we would vote no then if that's what we want.
No, it's not how it works. It would be a different motion because we amended a motion and the original motion. So actually, it's a different motion then.
I think we added a different, we added, the not posting it, but it was contradictory to the original motion. So why don't we just start over and say, what is it that we want? Just what we voted to amend. We still want to continue. Let me just get clear. We still want to continue recording, and we'd be recording and broadcasting, but we wouldn't be posting it after the meeting.
Yes.
Michelle?
I thought we wanted to have clarity on whether it can be recorded and not live broadcast. Is that not possible?
Right. We don't know that. We'd have to have clarity. So maybe before we vote on it, we get clarity. That's our intent.
More information.
I moved to table the original amendment until we have clarity.
Okay. And that
That
would
work?
be, do we have a second for tabling it? Maya, are you seconding or you want to make a comment? Okay, so we're tabling the motion to continue recording and broadcasting to find, recording and videoing to find out if we can not be broadcasting and continuing to record. Okay, so that's going to be tabled until, do you want to do a date certain or until we have the information? Laurel?
It would be until we, my amendment is till we have the information from the district.
Okay. And Maya seconded, so any more discussion about that? All those in favor, say aye. Raise your hand. Again, it passes unanimously. Okay. So we want to also, it's a short-term, one of the short-term plans was to hire security to be at our meetings. Laurel?
I would like to make a motion that if we have somebody who's inciting to a level in this, if we have security, they would be part of this. So that'd be the next motion, right? But that the room is cleared. Because a great way to diffuse something is while if it gets to the level where we go to recess and it's not because of us, it's because of the situation in the room, that we clear the room for the public safety. So I'd like to make a motion for that. So I guess I should have said it more concisely, but.
Yeah, can you repeat that?
My motion is to, if the board has to go to recess because of public behavior, then the room would be cleared of public.
We would go at recess and we would clear the room.
Or we would stay and they would leave.
The room we can go to recess, but somebody would be clearing the room. But only if it rose to that level and that behavior was that egregious, like we saw on the 18th, that instead of allowing, what we did was create what happened because of failure of leadership is we created a space for this to just flourish. But really best practice is to disperse. So I guess I did not make it more succinct, Kirti, and I'm sorry.
I'm not clear. So we would be it's that you clear the room until we all come back from recess, or for the rest of the day?
We clear the room, providing information that if we should come back for recess, the public would be notified that are outside the door. It honestly disperses that kind of behavior, or I get my tires slashed, whatever.
Maya?
I'm wondering, Laurel, if this might be a decision that we make with like until further notice attached. Because if we don't have hired, if we're only keeping security for a period of time, I don't know how we'll clear the room if people are disruptive and we don't have security. So maybe like, does that make sense? Like, that's just my concern is I don't.
I hear what you're saying, but if eWeb has security, I think we can have security.
You're saying you want security permanently?
They have permanent security that works. They have 2 security officers that work for the eWeb because they have lots of other responsibilities, but they also do come to their meetings. So they're employees.
I'm not
roughly.
saying how we have security, so we either contract or what, but I don't think we're in a time in this world where I want this to be a temporary thing.
So I think, I don't know the impact of clearing a room. It could accelerate things. And if you're moving, I don't know enough information. I've not ever seen that used. I've seen individuals removed. And I just don't know if it would increase the problem by trying to kick everyone out. And then you're putting people who are not part of it outside, maybe in the parking lot or the hall with people that are. I just have concerns about how that would work.
I was gonna say the same thing, which is I would like to table it until we get a safety report on the access and what the security things are, just because I really wouldn't want to make a decision that's putting other people's safety at risk either without more information.
Okay.
If we have the person being disruptive in the meeting and we have security, we would remove the disruptive person based on what we have.
Or people.
Or people, yes. Maya,
I mean, this to me sounds like the kind of situation where we should be calling EPD. If we need to remove people from the building.
We should have.
Right.
my understanding is the response time is questionable and the danger, it doesn't necessarily mean an immediate response. So hiring security to be on site or hiring Eugene police officers to be on site is the best way you'll get immediate response. I did look into that. They just don't have, they could have three calls in front of our call. So if we really want to guarantee to have someone on site, we need to either employ a security or ask Eugene Police Department to have someone stationed there, and they could be on site. So I'm just telling you what I learned, that they don't necessarily respond right away, depending on what else is going on. And we did, just in the past, in August, we did call Eugene Police Department, but the board at that time didn't want people to be removed by police officers from the premises because they thought that would be, I mean, I'm just saying what the board said at the time.
I was there in August. I don't remember the board voting on this.
We decided in recess, we did all agree to not have them arrested. I'm just saying, it can be different, and this is a different situation. I'm just sharing that.
Can we include as a possibility that if a meeting is this disruptive, that we do what we did in August, which is all go home and go online?
Absolutely. I think that's something we can definitely do.
Because I'm not interested in opening the door to having a constant police presence on any school grounds or district grounds.
So do we want to hire security to be there?
Well, we need to finish dealing with the motion that Laurel put on the table about clearing the room. And then we can make a motion about security.
I withdraw my motion. I want to bring it back as individuals later, which I assume is coming up.
Yeah. So I think that's associated with, do we want to have security on site? Whether, and pursue the recommended security companies to contract with them, or ask for Eugene as a fallback if there's no security company. I'm hearing that they're hard to engage for occasional meetings, but I think we'll try. To get
What is this? You said you had information, so it'd be great if you started with the information you had.
Well, I got the name of a security firm. There are some that are more reputable than others. The name of the security firm I got is the one that the Temple Beth Israel hires and is there. And we have the contact person there. We just have to reach out and see if they're available for our meetings if we decide to hire security. That's one option. That's the only security firm that got recommended in, but
Who
then,
is it?
pardon me?
Who is it?
Advanced Security Service, I think, or company, Advanced Security Company, I think.
Have we used Securitas? Are they any good? I've heard of them. I know that's a national chain or something.
I don't know. This is the only one that came recommended. So we can look into others. We can just make the motion about we want to hire a security firm.
Okay.
I would, I mean, I'll make that motion, but I would prefer to make a motion that we, as much as I would like to be in person, that we stay online until we've done our due diligence with research on security. I don't want to make a motion and then have to come back when we find out that every security company that's available to us has, complaints of lack of safety, or other issues like the security folks that we've used in the past. So personally, I feel strongly that we should, for our meetings, be online. If we have executive sessions, that's a different story. But if you want me to make the motion about hiring security, I will. I'm not sure I'll vote for it without having more time to research security. Security is, it feels appealing, but it also feels, it feels like it opens the door for some potentially dangerous situations if we don't end up doing our due diligence and research. So you can direct me either way, but my preference would be to move to stay online until we have more research time. And I want to give credit to folks who said that before me, because that wasn't my original idea. Looking at you, Alicia.
Well, we can move to do that, and then maybe given the hour, we continue our list and we do this at our next meeting. I don't know. I don't know that we're sort of wearing down here, I think. So
well, we have a meeting on Wednesday, and we need to have a plan in place. And the security question can come back up at any moment during any meeting. But I think we need to have an agreement as a board as to whether or not we're going to be coming in person or not. And
right, no, I'm saying let's act on that. And then if the board does pass that, I don't know that we have to go further tonight.
well, I think we still have to go further tonight because Laurel needs some sense of security in her private space.
Okay.
But I will move to move meetings into a virtual space until we have time to do more research on security firms.
That's all meetings, like including executive sessions that we were going to do together.
No, I mean
just public?
meetings. I mean meetings. I think executive sessions are very different. Executive sessions are not open to the public. Public meetings. I move to move public meetings into a virtual space until we have time to do our due diligence in researching security firms.
Okay, Maya moved and Alicia seconded. Any more discussion about that? Then we'll call the vote. All those in favor of doing that, raise your hand. That passes unanimously. Okay, let's move on to the motions for getting a safety assessment and purchasing what is needed at Laurel's home. Does someone want to word that? Maya?
I move to schedule a safety assessment at the earliest possible opportunity.
For Laurel's home.
Oh, this is for Laurel's home. I thought it was for our district space.
I thought that was okay. I thought we
Well,
were.
I mean, it can be for Laurel's home. We can do for Laurel's home. Yeah, absolutely. That needs to happen yesterday or today. So
I have a question about this.
Yes.
I have a huge problem with the supervisor of the person who has a complaint with me against me who coming into my home. Because I feel there was all of that work together. And but I have that's not part of my safety.
can I amend my motion to have the safety assessment done by a person not affiliated with 4J? Would that help, Laurel?
Yeah, I guess I'd have to figure out who that is. I mean, the reality is this hasn't felt very important to 4J except with my pushing and not being connected today. I probably would have done it if it happened today, but the reality, it's not important to anybody but me and my family, except I do realize everybody else is working on this at almost midnight, so please don't take it offense. I would like to, I just don't know where I would start, but I don't feel comfortable starting with the supervisor who approved whatever happened in that office.
I think the Eugene Police Department does safety assessments. Would you, that's the only other people I heard of, unless other people know other places.
I can ask. I know some people in EPD, so I'll ask, and they could probably tell me.
I think we do that, so.
Okay.
Okay.
So then can the motion then, Laurel, be that when it says the earliest opportunity, that would include time for you to do some research, but include the detail of it being somebody outside of the 4J system?
Yes. The only concern I have is I think this should be something that happens for our board members, because we have a beautiful board of colorful people. And I think it's really important. We don't know what motivates people. So I think this is something that we should vote on as something we do for board members. Because while this happened here, I see that as a wake-up call, not necessarily, hopefully, just about me. And we all are putting ourselves in the public arena doing this job. And we don't know who will take offense and why, but I think a safety assessment for all of us, I think it would be very important.
I appreciate that. And I would prioritize though, like, I mean, I would say yours and then the board space, like the 4J space. Like, I appreciate you thinking about the rest of us, but like, I mean, as a like named person on there, I would 100% prioritize your space and then the collective space. I don't know how the rest of you feel about that.
I would say if another board member feels in this, threatened or unsafe, they should speak up, and we should do the same for sure. Gordon.
Yeah, I would also do it in that order, and I could do this as a separate thing, but I would like to also say that I'm glad the meeting is happening tomorrow, and hopefully the assessment and the plan comes, but that until there's a plan in Laurel at your house.
There's no meeting set for tomorrow. Nobody's contacted me.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought that's what Judy said. Well, what I'm going to say now is that until there is a plan that comes out of a meeting like that, or based on the assessment, that the district should pay for you and your family to stay in a hotel. If you think that that's a safer option until a more serious home security plan is in place.
I have a my daughter who is recovering from surgery. I have a son who goes to work every day. I have like the reality of me having to jump through so many hoops just because of this is exhausting. Frankly, I did it this weekend and it's just freaking exhausting and I can't continue that. And I have to still go to work tomorrow morning. I appreciate it though.
So should we vote on the motion? Go
Well,
ahead, Maya.
Laurel made a point, so I want to give another shot at the amendment if that's, at the motion, if that's okay, which is to conduct a safety assessment of Laurel's house, the district space, and any board member who requests it at the earliest opportunity.
I second it.
Any discussion? Okay, all those in favor then, raise your hand. Passes unanimously. Okay. I think the other thing that we could, well, we decide to meet virtually. The statement I read, can we immediately institute using that at our meetings in addition to our current statement to add the wording to it to at least?
Could you read it again, Judy?
Sure. I won't read the whole first part because that's our usual, but there are a few rules that guide our public comment process that are important to remember. We'll remind you if you forget. Each speaker will have 3 minutes. The speaker should state their name and where they district. Okay. The speaker should be aware of the entire audience in the room, including children, and should refrain from the use of profanity, hate speech, or threatening or intimidating language. Speakers may offer criticism of district operations or programs, but the board will not hear comments concerning specific district personnel. So adding that statement puts the audience on warning. It's something we will not tolerate. And we might want to go deeper. We have this one at hand. We can easily add it to our statement right away.
Maya, you're muted.
I move to add the statement Judy just read to the beginning of our public comments pending further consideration of a deeper statement, possibly.
Do we have a second? Maya moved and Michelle seconded. Any discussion? Laurel?
I think it needs to mention racist, anti-Semitic, I'm sorry, all the things that I was told by a member of the board at eWeb that if somebody comes to public comment and starts speaking inappropriately, all they have to do is go like this and security removes them. I'm not sure if that's totally legal, but I know we could have something where it's like, I have sat through public comment that is viciously offensive and very racist, and not a word could be said. And you know what? When we allow that kind of thing, we're saying it's okay. So I believe in free speech, but I also believe in free speech to the point where we get to make guidelines to say you may, and we get to put this in this thing to say, please tell us, like if they say, I don't believe in CRT or getting vaccinations. Yes, you absolutely can say that. I mean, technically not believing to talk about our history and racism can be offensive, but they have taught themselves to talk about it in very pretty ways. And so that's fine if they say it like that. If they say it in a more offensive way, like we have heard recently, we know when we hear it, don't we? I mean, maybe not everybody, but I'd say most of the board knows when they hear it, not everybody on it, but most of the board knows when they hear it. It's not appropriate and it shouldn't happen. And that's when it gets shut down. So when it happens at public comment, when it happens, well, we know the outburst is something different. That we are able to say something. I'm tired. Sorry, we all are.
With hate speech, it says hate speech.
That is so just milquetoast. Hate
Okay.
speech. The thing about hate speech is people can say, if I say you're a white supremacist, that's hate speech. Because but if I say you're a white supremacist, I'm saying your oppression against me because of my skin color is inappropriate behavior. That's not hate speech. But people don't get to just define that because they don't like the word. But we do have accepted, known,
Can we use like the language that we use to a certain extent in our like equal employment stuff, like race, sex, religion, whatever the things are, like Michelle just put in there, like just whatever the things are, like in the chat, like we use language and those things, that it's like whatever the anti that is, and just call it out.
or we could reference our racial harassment and our bias, I can't remember the whole name of it, policies, and say, please see these, because this is what we're talking about. And then if anybody, because they have it
I think that-
written it all out in policies. I think there's,
How about use the same language that's in that policy?
we could, but they're pretty long. You may get really tired, Judy. I think referencing the policy would probably, and we can have it on the website.
Yeah, I mean, it'd be like whatever, I think that's at least a good place to start. And I mean, so we can add to whatever. I mean, but like, I know we've got the like anti, like, you don't want to make hate comments against race, sex, religion, whatever the.
Yep.
Based on those, yeah. Physical ability, all kinds of.
Yeah, exactly. All of those things that we reference in our.
So we could move to, we're still discussing this, right? So we want to amend it to add more explicit language using those terms from our other policy. Is that where we are? Laurel?
Yeah, we want to, the way it's written, it leaves so much to interpretation that it weakens it. I think it's great that somebody wrote it. I think what happens is things like that get written in such a way to say, I look what I've done, but it actually doesn't do much because it's not strong enough. It's kind of like where we started with the racial harassment policy and where we ended up. It started out as a good idea, but not strong enough. And it ended up as a strong policy because you needed to add more substance to it. So that's what I'm saying. Well, apparently I become more loquacious as the more tired I get.
So, okay, I'm just going to suggest that the intent is that we want to be more explicit in our language, and maybe Maya and leadership could look at the policy that we have and add it, and we'll read it, and if people don't like it, we can change it. This isn't a policy, this is a statement. But we get the intent, we want to be explicit and use that language. So would people be okay with that? Are you okay, Maya? I'm volunteering you to help me look in those policies and add it to the statement.
Okay, are people expecting us to, we don't have any public comment until June 1st.
Yeah.
I am super okay with that. When I thought it was in 48 hours or less than 48 hours, it was like, I got other things.
Okay.
Okay, Yes, I am okay with that.
So,
So then I guess the motion is that we move to read the statement before public comment pending Judy and Maya's expanding of the language to make it stronger.
you got it.
What you said.
Second.
Okay, Maya moved, Kirthi second. Any more conversation about that? Discussion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, it passes unanimously.
There's one more.
See, there's one more short term?
I think there's one more short term, and
3
unless-
minutes, Maya. No, just kidding.
I'm not, hey, I will take 3 minutes to say it. It's up to y'all who are discussing it. I move to, I know, I understand, Gordon, you want something bigger and bolder, but I move for the time being to compensate Laurel for her security that she has in place at her house.
Maya moved and Gordon seconded. Any discussion? All those in favor say aye. It passes unanimously. Okay, so those are
Done
the
now.
term things now. Okay, good. Then we have a meeting in 2 nights, Wednesday night, everyone. So
So then are we going to be doing the deliberations in person and then go home for the meeting, or are we going to deliberate virtually?
what is the will of the board?
Oh, good Lord. Jeez.
I don't remember what we're doing. We're doing
Are we
it.
allowed to like, are we allowed to bring like drinks to the campus? I'm just kidding.
Laurel, we are deliberating selection of superintendent
Oh,
in executive session, and it's followed by a special meeting.
okay.
I think that just needs to be virtually. That's what we said. We weren't going to go back in.
Can't,
I know there's no public comment, but it's a public meeting.
No, the executive session is not a public meeting.
But the second part is,
I understand that, but you said then we went into a meeting. Isn't that the question?
Right. So my question was, do we deliberate in person and then go home for our special meeting?
yeah, it says, and the special meeting is noticed only if needed to take some action. So we can open it up or not. So
Christine has her hand up, but I also have a question that
Christine,
I
oh.
think it's important that, I don't know, it could be that I just feel like we're coming to a point here that maybe we want to be in the same room for this, but I don't know. But we'll need more probably time in between meetings than we usually give ourselves if we do this. So, and I'm only saying, I agree with what you're saying, Alicia, but I'm kind of thinking for this one, it's pretty special. So, it's like almost the end, fingers crossed, almost the end of a lot of hard work.
Christine has her hand up. Christine?
I didn't know if you also wanted to have some time to review the contract and make any decisions around that. I thought that might be something that is time sensitive that you wanted to do and plan for on Wednesday.
That's a really good point. Yes. Probably we should do that. So I think the question is, since some of this will be an open meeting, that's an open meeting, and some will be an executive session, do we want to do some in person and then go back and do the rest virtually, or vice versa?
So I just realized that my husband is having band practice here. So you guys probably like, there's going to be like a massive band playing in the background. So if neither here nor there, but I probably need to be elsewhere. So I can probably show up to one of y'all's houses if we want to do this virtually, but like there's going to be 7 other people with instruments.
That sounds actually more fun.
Yeah,
Come to your house.
yeah.
Maya,
I think I agree with Laurel. This is a really important meeting, and when we're having an important discussion, I think we do a lot better when we're in person. I know it's a pain to split it and have to go home to do the meeting part, but I think that we should deliberate and have the privacy, because it's not just the noise, it's also people being in your background and in your space. We should be really careful with our executive session for something of this magnitude and then go home afterwards. That's what I would suggest, even if it is a bit of a pain. But it also then gives us like a half an hour break, which honestly wouldn't be a terrible thing. Sometimes those 7-minute breaks are insufficient.
do you want to, anyone opposed to that idea? So please speak up if you are, but if not, I'm just going to say, I don't see any dissent to that suggestion. So that will be the plan. Okay. Then is everyone okay if we adjourn?
Yeah, why is it daylight in
no.
Gordon's house?
Judy, we need people to cover the tomorrow for the interviews.
Oh, right. There was I don't know. I haven't checked my email in a little while. If anyone can do those last interviews, please look at your email and sign up for those that you could do.
Alicia had not pegged you for the like one more question.
So
I've done every,
Is the
I think
first
I've
one-
done
is it-
almost every single
Judy, isn't there one
reference
like
interview, so I'm
Isn't
hoping
there
other
one-
people will
yeah.
sign up.
There's one at 8 a.m. That was originally Wednesday at 8, but she called and moved it to
I
tomorrow.
mean, it'd be nice to have that committed to before we hopped off, and hope that somebody between now and 8 a.m. commits to it, not it.
I have chickens. I'll do it.
Great. I'll do it with you, Laurel. We got 2 people then.
I don't know what I'm doing, but I'll be there.
I'll-
I hope there'll be something in my email that'll get me there.
There will be.
Are the other ones accounted for, Judy?
No, but people could look at their email and maybe do it then. I don't know what to go through unless, will people just look at the email and email if you could do them at this time? I just think at this hour for us to be scheduling.
And this is important because we're trying to be very even with what we're doing. So
Correct.
it's important that we try to treat all of our people exactly the same. I like
So
that. I
instead
like
of
that
having-
we're trying to do that.
I think it'll be shorter if we just go offline, everyone looks at their email, look at their schedule and just respond of what you can do. Okay? Then I'm going to adjourn this meeting on actually May 24th at 12:05. So see you all soon.
See you in a few hours.